Dr. Richa Mittal. I'm an internal medicine doctor and also board certified in obesity medicine. I practice in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I have my own integrative medical weight loss practice, and all these topics about metabolic issues are my passion, and so I'm really excited to be here today. Sono?
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Sono Harder, and I am an internal medicine doctor. I practice academic, I'm an academic internist in Phoenix, Arizona. And my passion is, like Hafiza mentioned earlier, food is medicine, prevention is key. And the wonderful thing is I get to work with medical students and residents, so they keep me on my toes, and I am very evidence-based in my approaches.
Okay, so let's get started. Start with physical activity first, because that's where we left off on little ways to incorporate physical activity. So, Sheila, what does the American Heart Association say in terms of what's the bare minimum?
Absolutely. So I think let's break up physical activity into kind of understanding it in terms of moderate intensity and high intensity. When it comes to high intensity exercise, they recommend 75 minutes per week. But really, I like to tell patients, I like to have them focus on moderate intensity goals, and that looks like 150 minutes per week. So you can break that up any way you want. It can be 30 minutes, 5 days a week, or any other variation of time. But the key is moderate intensity, because when we look at epidemiologic data for women especially, moderate intensity activity showed a clinical benefit when it was performed 4 to 6 times per week. But so did any physical activity. So the key really is to get moving and to stay moving consistently. So I'd like to see our women who are listening commit to 4 to 6 times per week, because that's where we saw that clinical benefit. And remember, it's not just about cosmetics. Remember those numbers. That 1 pound lost is 4 pounds of pressure off your mom's knee. Remember that every time you work out, you're improving your insulin glucose uptake and insulin utilization in the body. And you're improving the way that your body regulates food and stress and so many other factors that are going to contribute to your overall heart health and overall health. So, Richa, tell me, when it comes to understanding about physical activity and weight loss and goals, or some of the stuff that I was mentioning, it's really important to understand the benefits of weight training.
Yes, for sure. So
women about that.
Yes, so it's so important. I think everyone, focuses on cardio, which is great and really useful, like you mentioned, not only from the standpoint of weight management or insulin sensitivity, or even weight maintenance for my patients that go through kind of that period of time where they've now gotten to where they want to be. Studies show that cardiovascular activity as well as weight training can actually help you to maintain the weight loss that you've achieved. And part of that has to do with when you have more muscle, you burn more energy at rest. And so that's called your basal metabolic rate. And so that's going to go up. Also, you alluded to this in relationship to aerobic activity, but actually when you have more muscle mass, you are also more insulin sensitive. And that's really important for our population, like you guys just talked about extensively, is that we're at this higher risk of developing insulin resistance. And like Hafiza said, it's not an insulin shortage, it's that our body isn't responding to insulin the way it should be. So when we have more exercise and we have more muscle mass on us, we actually can respond to insulin better, which is going to down the line improve our risk of diabetes. So the guidelines and recommendations are at least 2 days a week of muscle resistance training. And for a lot of people, including myself, sometimes that can sound kind of intimidating. Like, I don't want to go into a gym and, pick up weights. And of course, right now we can't go into the gym. And so simple things that one can do is just to get up and, lean against your wall and just kind of squat down. Or maybe you're cooking and you start doing some lunges across the kitchen, or you do a little squats competition with your children. I caught my husband doing that with the kids the other day. So, just to get into like start moving and using your lower body because those are the biggest muscles in our body. A lot of times people, focus on strength training because they want to tone their arms, and that's an admirable goal. But our biggest metabolic burners are our glutes and hamstrings and quads, so your butt and your legs. And so getting those moving, activities like Pilates and yoga are also great ways to do that. You don't have to have fancy gym equipment. You can just simply do planks on the floor. And just, starting to be really mindful of the fact that if we incorporate even just like you said, small amounts of those, bursts of activity related to muscle resistance training, in addition, we can really get a lot of health benefits. So I wanted to turn it over to Sheila about kind of how we can go about setting goals, because the idea of exercise can sometimes be so intimidating.
Yeah, it's definitely going to keep this one brief. Start small, be committed. I think one of the most important things to do is set a goal that's realistic, that you can stick to, but then be kind to yourself. Remember why you're in this. The whole point about this is to change. We're in it for the long game. We want you to change your life and make it heart healthy so you live a long life, right? My goal is to get all my patients to 90. So celebrate small wins and don't be hard on yourself, right? Remember to be so kind to yourself because that inner voice is so important. Use a mnemonic. When it comes to setting goals and wanting to be successful, the SMART mnemonic, actually, Richa, you introduced me to it, is a really great mnemonic to remember. So the mnemonic is SMART. S stands for be specific about the goal, make it measurable, make it assignable. So assign yourself to it or assign the goal at the beginning of the day, maybe, or the night before. Make it relevant. Remember what your why is. And try to make it about health. Cosmetic goals are great, but really try to make it about health because you'll be much softer in your approach to yourself. And make it time-based. Commit to time. And all those minutes will add up. So what about specific workouts? Richa, you threw out yoga, Pilates, Sono. Tell us, what about Pilates, yoga? Are there any helpful apps? How can, people who want variety, what kind of variety can they bring to their physical activity workout?
So I think the best part about the times we are in is access, right? There was a time when our access was going to the gym for a workout, but now with social media and apps on the phone, we really have home access to Pilates, yoga. I think as far as financial, burden goes, a lot of people can actually have membership at a low cost, but get all the benefits of going to a proper gym. So my motto in my practice for my patients is education and empowering them. We talk about, all three ladies covered physical activity and its impact on insulin and blood pressure and heart, but it also has significant impact on your mood, on your stress levels, on anxiety, on depression. And who does not want a boost of mental and physical health at the same time? I mean, how many times have you taken a walk, come back with a clearer mind, right? You make better decisions when you work out and when you have a better mind and better emotions. And so I think workout is good all over. But to answer your question, Sheila, I think one size does not fit all. So when you pick your workout, be realistic about what your actual goal is. Is your goal to lose weight? Is your goal to build muscles? And those goals could change over time. So be realistic about it. Number two, what are your resources? Is your resource, I think with COVID-19, we all have sort of opted for home workouts, and it has given us big spectrum of different apps. I personally work out, I use my one Peloton workout and an app called Sweat, which is literally 20 minutes, no weights needed, a lot of burpees, a lot of jumping jacks. 20 minutes can be so effective if it's high intensity interval training. Sometimes 60 minutes can be daunting, and I feel like it doesn't have to be 60 minutes. If you are running out of time, 15 and 20 minutes of quick workouts can be just as effective. So staying consistent, be aware of what your resources are, and also take into consideration your age and your medical conditions. Running may not be for everybody. Yoga and Pilates are great for people who have back pain or joint pain or, just in general stretching and muscle problems. You can mix it up so you can still enjoy and, derive joy. So I feel like that's kind of my motto. And some of my favorite apps are Sweat, One Peloton, Nike has a app, and there is another app, I think, for women, and it's called Shock. And it basically customizes based on your age and your weight and your height and your goal, and it's awesome. It's on the phone. So I'm going to pass it on to Richa now, because I think we come to a point of nutrition and diet. And I can tell you, even as a physician, I'm very confused about which diet works. You hear about keto diets, then you hear about a moderate carb diet, then you hear about all kinds of diets. And I cannot imagine how confusing it is to people around us who are thinking, what should I do? Should I eat my carbs? I mean, you guys keep talking about diabetes. So, Richa, what is your take? Are you a big fan of these fad diets?
No, not a big fan of fad diets, but definitely a fan of lifestyle changes that are small, slow, and sustainable. So this is kind of the bread and butter of my day-to-day. I see patients who are trying to reverse diabetes, prevent diabetes, who might have had a history of PCOS or gestational diabetes, or, people who are already kind of on the spectrum of having diabetes or wanting to lose weight to optimize their health, or maybe get weight off to improve their arthritis in their knees, so many other, health complications. Nutrition is key. And, we're talking about all the different factors today that are affecting that. But, where I start with nutrition is I want to see where are you starting now and what are small improvements that we can make right away. There is no, kind of one perfect diet for everybody, right? Mm-hmm. We're all unique. We all have different likes and dislikes, but there are some basic kind of tenets that you could say across the board for everybody. Number one is eat real food. You guys talked about that in your last session. If you have to go to a manual to figure out what the ingredients are in something, well, first of all, look at the label, right? So whenever you're shopping, if you come to the store with me, which lately I haven't been, it takes forever because I look at every label, but you should be too. You want to know what's in your food. Are you eating a real food? Are there chemicals in there? And if you're buying stuff that's real food, there isn't even a label, right? So that could be a goal, is like having most of your diet include foods that don't have a label. But if you are buying something with a label, you want to make sure that you're, buying things that have more protein and fiber, and you recognize all the ingredients. As far as basic food goes, I think a lot of times we have this kind of image like, well, we're eating real food because, most people are cooking at home, or, especially our parents' generation. But what happens is that a lot of times the foods are more higher glycemic. And I know you guys talked about this before too, is, when we're eating something that is very carby, and, I talked about this in my demonstration, I took upma, which is a classic thing that we eat. How can we make it better, right? So better things are going to be higher fiber. Semolina, which is what we use, or rava when we make upma or halva, it is the wheat that's devoid of the fiber. So if we can find options that have grains that have more fiber, we're going to add more vegetables. That's another kind of common thing right across the board. If we're eating more vegetables, more fruit. Sono, you just mentioned for people who have diabetes or who have insulin resistance, having a lower carb approach can be helpful, but it doesn't mean that they need to necessarily be eating keto or carnivore, where they're just eating meat and eating a lot of saturated fat there, which we'll get into in a little bit. So that's another thing, is just eating more carbohydrates that have more fiber, eating more plants, eating more foods that are in their normal state. Those are kind of the basics of where to start. And then according to your particular health, and if you're trying to lose weight, then yes, you want to, add in more of that calorie restriction and things that, we talk about with our patients who are trying to, lose weight as well. A lot of times if you cut out all the processed foods and sugary foods, or not all. And, Sheila mentioned this before, and I love that. One of my tenets in life is nobody's perfect, and you don't have to be perfect to actually make significant changes. And be very kind to yourself. And if you really enjoy something, then there's a time for cake too, right? But it doesn't mean that we have to be eating that level of sugar every day. Cutting out sodas, excess sugar, those are all the basics of a healthy nutrition plan to start with. I want to turn it over to Sheila to really talk to us about the details now about the DASH diet and the Mediterranean diet. Because in my practice and in my life, I practice a Mediterranean diet with an Indian Desi twist. That's my goal in life, to figure out how to get everyone on that. So Sheila, I'd love for you to talk more about that now.
Absolutely. I think the perspective, if you're listening to all of this, the perspective is Hafiza and I are getting known cardiovascular patients or patients who want to know specific about their cardiovascular risk. So we really prescribe the DASH diet frequently. It's often the first line of care for early hypertension, pre-hypertension, and it's very simple, and it's very much what you guys have been saying, right? It is dietary approaches to stop hypertension, and it's clinically proven. You can see results in 2 weeks, literally 14 days. And it comes with reading the label, reducing sodium to 15 milligrams or 1,500 milligrams or less. My goal for most patients is really try to, at 1,000 or less, read the sodium intake of everything that you're adding, the packages that you're opening, they're loaded with salt. And it's really important because it's something that makes our food taste good, so you have to adapt to it. But know that when we say eat a variety of foods, eat the rainbow, eat many different colors, why are we saying that? That's because when you eat a variety of foods, you're getting potassium, magnesium, calcium. These naturally lower your blood pressure, and they're in whole, fresh foods. So eat lots of vegetables. Vegetables are not just a side dish. They should be your main dish. And don't overcook them. Hafiza is going to really give us a great lesson on cooking oils, how to cook, how to make the vegetables really enhance their heart health and nutrients. And keep that in mind. You really need to keep your vegetables high. Your grains need to be whole grains with fiber. Try to stay away from enriched wheats. Very important about reading the label, because the first 5 ingredients are usually the highest level of product that's in that item. And if it's partially hydrogenated or it's enriched wheat, all of these things that really affect cholesterol and glycemic level. And be mindful of potatoes. Oh, sorry, let me get back on task. DASH diet. So pretty much DASH is very simple. It's lots of fruits and vegetables. It's lots of lean meat, but mostly it's eating less sodium, 1,500 milligrams maximum. The Mediterranean diet, which I prescribe for a lot of my patients, also want Hafiza to talk about the heart health Desi twist to it, is incorporating and leading with good fat olive oil. That's the basis of the Mediterranean diet. 3 tablespoons of olive oil per day. Lots of nuts because of their monounsaturated fat, which has been clinically proven to lower total cholesterol as well as bad cholesterol, which is really, really key. And increasing fish, because fatty fishes like albacore, tuna, salmon, these fish have a significant impact with their omega-3 fatty acid source in lowering triglycerides. So I just threw out a big word, monounsaturated fat. And I also just talked about olive oil. Now, there's a benefit that's seen in oils, and we hear a lot about oils. Hafiza is an oil expert, in my opinion, and I think she presents this topic so beautifully. Hafiza, please tell our viewers all about the dangers of oils and what they can do to preserve the nutrients in the oils, as well as how to make the Mediterranean diet South Asian.
Yeah, I've got a 24-year-old, a 20-year-old son, and so they need a lot of food. And I'm Southern Indian. My family is from Kerala. So our Indian food is olive oil is great, but it's not so great for all of our Indian types of cooking, because most South Indian and Indian food starts out with You heat the oil in the frying pan, and then you sizzle mustard, curry leaves, and red. We need that oil to be really hot. That's why we use ghee and coconut oil. So we take butter and we turn it into ghee so that it doesn't burn when we back up the flame. And so ghee is perfect for that. And in southern India, we use coconut oil because it has a higher heat. The problem is that ghee is a plant, is saturated fat that has cholesterol because it comes from animals. Okay, so it's saturated because in temperature it's a solid, and it comes from an animal, so it's not cholesterol. But what about southern India? We don't eat, and the average Malayali has twice as much heart disease as the average Punjabi who is eating butter chicken and roti and mutton. Why are we southern Indians more? Because coconut oil is that. So it comes from a plant. It doesn't have cholesterol, but it's a solid, so it's a saturated. So coconut oil is not healthy, my friend. So it's bad. So what can we use that's going to heat up real hard, fast, so that we sizzle those mustard seeds, curry leaves? I use avocado oil. So avocado oil will heat really hot. Will give you that sizzle where the mustard top off for the home, and it doesn't add a whole lot of flavor. So it's very neutral. Corn oil, safflower oils, those oils are refined, bleached. Refined means that means that they're chemically processed, bleached to make them a color that's attractive to the American consumer. The American consumer doesn't want an oil that has a lot of flavor. Okay, so taking flavor out, making it a neutral color involves chemically processing. So the more we humans do to mess up our food, the worse it is. So I use expeller pressed avocado oil for my that involves, sambar and dal. You have to put the tava on top. So you heat it up and sizzle. So it's very easy for Indian cooking. That. I'm not saying that I don't use a little bit of coconut, but it's not the primary oil. When I'm making American food for my family, pasta, that I will use olive oil.
There's a question about sesame oil.
Sesame oil is good. It just adds a flavor to my a little bit. Richa, what do you think? Sesame oil.
Yeah, I think if it's the expeller press, like you mentioned, then there's going to be less of the heat and chemical processing to extract oil from the seed. I think it does, like you said, lend a flavor. So I think in general, the avocado oil tends to be a better option for the high heat cooking, like you said, for the tadka, and then olive oil for your moderate heat up to 375 degrees. So sesame, I think if you're wanting the flavor, then it's an okay option if it's expeller pressed.
And there was a question about safflower and sunflower oils. And a lot of those oils are, again, vegetable oils that are purchased in America, refined, bleached, and distilled, RBD, okay? Humans mess with our food. It's bad. Refining, bleaching, distilling. We take wheat and we make it white. How does that become white? Sugar? How white? Actually, it's brown when it comes out of from the cane because somebody bleached it, my friends. How come our rice is so white? When you go to the paddy fields in my grandmother's house, it comes out brown and red because someone took the hull off and bleached it, my friends. So when we screw up our food by bleaching, distilling, altering, we take out all the nutrients. So the less we can mess with our food and the way it's given to us, the better it is.
Yep. What about rice, Hafiza? You've talked about this. I think that would be a great relevant thing to discuss right now.
Yeah. So I'm, we eat rice, but Southern India have twice as many heart attacks as the average Punjabi who is eating chicken, butter chicken, and naan with butter. But we are fish eaters. We are vegetable. How are we dying? That's because carbs are our poison. So when I used to go to my grandmother's house, she would have two types of rice: the red rice, Kerala Mata rice, the one with the hull, and when her American grandchildren came, she'd give them white rice, the polished one, because this was the poor person's rice. American grandkids needed white rice. All of the nutrients are on the outer part of that rice. 1 cup of rice has more carbs than a jelly donut. So, eating a cup, why don't you just take the glucose and just shove it in your vein and just enjoy? So, rice is our southern Indian poison. It's better to eat that than it is to eat a glob of white rice. So, Kerala Mata rice is unhealthy rice. So, I know that what I use for my family is California basmati. So my husband and son will not eat brown rice. Okay, they're not going to eat brown rice. So that's what you should eat, and that's what I eat. So how can I make it better? So brown basmati rice, what I eat, but I give my husband and kids basmati rice from California. Basmati is a medium glycemic rice compared to jasmine white rice. And California has rices can have arsenic in them and from the water, poison in the water supply. So California white basmati rice is a happy medium where it's medium glycemic index, it's low arsenic, and but the right answer is brown rice.
There were some questions that came through. I thought we could just address since we were talking about rice. Oh, where did it go? Okay, well, there was a question.
I just wanted to chime in. Jeera, as a Punjabi, jeera rice was my favorite. Mutter chawal, all that with the fried onions and the peas. And I make that dish now with quinoa. So you can make your jeera tarka. I mean, you guys did an amazing demo, and it's what we've been talking about all morning with quinoa-based foods. But you can make quinoa. Obviously, you do have to make sure your family likes it. But it's, if you're having a dinner party, start to lead the way. Start to make changes and show them the way. Because quinoa is a much healthier grain source and and the glycemic index really hurts women even worse than men. So very important to show them the way too.
Yeah, and I was going to add that I actually make biryani with cauliflower rice. And I know sometimes people are a little bit polarized about cauliflower rice. What I've found that's helpful for patients, and we've done it as well at home, is sometimes we'll prepare a little bit of rice and then mix it in with the cauliflower rice. And that way you're still getting a little bit of the texture if you wish, but you're increasing your veggie intake and you're really lowering that glycemic index, but you're still enjoying the flavors, which is really important.
I think the other option for eating rice, so my parents love rice, and I don't think they will ever give it up, right? So what they do, what I think I'm a big fan of, is on their plate, they have almost half the plate covered with vegetables and lentils, and maybe a small portion of white rice. So you start your plate with loading it up with a lot of steamed vegetables, not too much processed vegetables, but lentils, vegetables, some fresh salad, and a little bit of rice. So you're not overeating the rice, and you're full with all the fiber you get from the vegetables.
Yes, those are great points. Someone mentioned about farro. That's a whole wheat. I do use that in my cooking. What I will say, a note about grains, is that you have to be really aware of portion size. So, it's not only about, okay, are we choosing quinoa, are we choosing farro, or is it parboiled rice, which does have a lower glycemic index, brown rice. But you also want to be aware, like Sono said, about, that's a portion. So a portion is 1/4 cup uncooked or half a cup cooked. And so then when you're balancing that out and you have the rest of your veggies covering half your plate, and we can send out the link for my Harvard has a plate diagram, which is like half covered in veggies. You have 1/4 of it with whole grains, and then you have your proteins and your good fats for the other 1/4. So I think that covers that. And we were going to touch a little bit, Sono, on intermittent fasting. I know we have a whole session on that
Sure.
a little bit later today.
So before we go to fasting, Richa, one quick thing.
Sure.
I think the way we cook our vegetables also matters. I think boiling them to a point of losing the insoluble and soluble fiber, right, the resistant starch, is not a good idea. So steaming them enough where we can maintain the texture and the fiber is the most healthy way of eating all our vegetables. I think as Indian people, we have a ton of spices and flavors, which is what makes our food so wonderful. And we can still make it flavorful, but we don't have to boil the vegetables to death. So just kind of keeping that texture is key. So going to intermittent fasting, that's a great topic because I grew up in India and actually moved to the United States in my mid-20s. And I remember fasting with my mother, and she used to fast every Monday, and I used to fast with her. And the idea of fasting back then was eating certain kind of fruits all day long. So it was fruits and it was tapioca and certain nuts. And that was the idea of fasting. But we know now that that is not the fasting we are talking about. So fasting, the way people did it in Stone Age, where you give your body a full break from any calories coming into your system. And I really learned about intermittent fasting from my very good friend, Dr. Amy Shah, who has a great session in the summit on intermittent fasting. And what that essentially means is you have a eating window and you have a fasting window. So when you are fasting, you really aren't consuming any calories, but you're hydrating with water and you are really giving your body a pause. And the reason, there's a lot of research and a lot of studies that do support that this kind of lifestyle actually promotes weight loss in a healthy way. It reduces your risk of diabetes. It reduces your risk for prediabetes. And it really keeps that insulin resistance and sensitivity that we are all talking about a fair chance for having that. And why? Because if you think about your body as a machine, insulin is produced by your body in response to any calories, specifically carbs that are coming through your system. The more you expose your body to insulin and more frequently you expose your body to insulin or high calorie foods, all can cause your insulin to be high or elevated levels at all times, which you can imagine, insulin doesn't just affect your glucose, but it also affects your fat and protein metabolism. It stores more fat. So the more insulin you have in your body, the more fat you will store, specifically around your waist and around your abdominal area. So in order to prevent that kind of those kind of habits, it's a good idea to give our body a rest. So when I started my journey on intermittent fasting, I started specifically with 12 hours of fast. What that meant was once I had dinner at 8 p.m., I would not consume any calories until 8 a.m. in the morning. My eating window was between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. As I practiced this and got better at it, I kind of increased my fasting window from 12 to 14 to 16 and keeping my eating window at about 8 hours. Now, this has proven to be beneficial in a lot of healthy people, but also people who are fighting diabetes and certain cancers. So it's a great way, and I think it's very intimidating, but if you think about it, we sleep for about 7 to 8 hours. So if you tack on an hour before, an hour after, that's a great way of fasting and resting your body, and a simple way. So I think that's a great way, and I'm going to let Dr. Amy Shah give all the details on intermittent fasting in her session. So I think talking about, Richa, you talk a lot about metabolic resilience, and it's resiliency to me is bouncing back stronger and better. So I would love for you to tell our viewers what metabolic resilience is all about and why it matters.
Sure. So, everything that we're talking about here has kind of a common denominator, right? And what it comes down to, especially for us South Asians, is the insulin resistance piece. And how does that really get affected by all these things, right? So there's what we eat, there's how we move, how much we move, stress management, which we'll talk about, sleep, and fasting. So what happens in the body, just kind of briefly, is so like you said, metabolic resilience. Why do I talk about that? It's the ability of the body to bounce back from a stressor. But what happens is over time when we have all these different stresses, and some of the major stresses that we're talking about is dietary overloads, and when we're just eating way too many calories, when we don't sleep enough, if we're having a lot of stress, if we're not moving, so lack of physical activity is a stressor on the body. All these different things actually affect our mitochondria. And that's actually kind of the basis of insulin resistance, because mitochondria are the powerhouses of our cells that are basically, their job is to burn energy, right? So when we throw things off by having all these different habits that maybe we're not thinking about, add up over time, that leads to metabolic stress. And that overwhelms our body's ability to adapt to what's being presented to it. And then when these stressors build up, we have inflammation, we have increased amounts of visceral fat, which was talked about in the last session, which is the fat that we store around our midsection and our abdominal organs. And so basically over time, our body has less reserve to be able to deal with the next insult, right? So what we can do to build metabolic resilience, or the ability to come back from it, is take these factors that are all lifestyle factors, right, and try to optimize each of them. And we're not going to be perfect. We're not always going to get every single thing right. But what we can do is actually work towards thinking about each of these different things that we're covering today and how we can make our mitochondria and our body able to really bounce back from this. And I know she's going to be talking about this later today, but one of the things that we look at, and there's several different factors involved at our cell levels, including things like fasting, can actually help to reverse some of the damage that we unfortunately undergo when we go through these different stressors in our lives. But all these things are in our hands. And our objective today is really to give you the tools to, really try to start thinking about being very mindful about the fact that every decision, like right now, I'm taking this call while I'm sitting, I could have been standing, or I could have maybe had an extra portion of vegetables, or I could have really maybe prioritized sleep instead of, scrolling through my Instagram at midnight. And so all these things that we're talking about are really building that lifestyle mindfulness so that we can really build our body's ability to bounce back, right? Because then we decrease our risk on a cellular level. So I'm going to turn this over to Sono, who was going to talk to us more about stress management and why we want to address stress, and then maybe ways that we can address it.
Absolutely. So here's how I look at a body, and I think it's a wonderful system that works well when we respect how it was supposed to be managed. And what I mean by that is we have two systems in a body, sympathetic and a parasympathetic. And if you think about those two systems, imagine a car that needs an accelerator, but also needs a braking system, because you cannot just speed without braking. And those two systems kind of balance our stress all in all. Now, we have to be mindful of these two systems and how they operate in our body. Now, let's look at our general life and a day-to-day life. We have some minor stressors on a day-to-day life, like trying to get through the traffic to go to work and getting there on time, dropping kids to school, or trying to cook a meal, right? All these are little small stressors that can actually cause tiny, tiny stress. But what that means is the sympathetic system, your car's accelerator system, kind of pumps your blood pressure a little bit higher, increases your heart rate, can also release a little bit of that stress hormone. And those are not always a bad thing as long as you know how to bring them down. Now imagine some big major stressors like loss or relationship challenges, a financial loss, a health battle. Those can be chronic stressors, meaning your accelerator system could be on overdrive or could be firing up all day long. And that really has some very long-term chronic medical issues like heart disease, depression, anxiety, that also can lead to making poor choices as far as eating goes, which can then lead to diabetes and other medical conditions. So really, I mean, it would be foolish for me to say, don't stress. I mean, we all stress, and it's inevitable. We all are going to some major and minor situations, events. What is so important to understand is how to trigger that brake system that I talked about, which is the parasympathetic system. And if you think about it, our body is a whole, it's a combination of your mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, financial health. It's not just one compartment. So number one is being mindful of all these little small strategies. You know, I think Hafiza mentioned about yoga being something that all Indians, at some point, we all knew about it, we practiced it. I, for one, used to practice yoga back in India. And when I moved to the United States, became a member of LA Fitness, and nothing wrong with that, but gave up yoga and went back to yoga a couple of years ago. So I think number one is understanding that there are strategies, if done consistently, can help reduce your impact of your stress on your blood pressure and heart. For example, meditation, keeping a gratitude journal. I know for one that I've looked at a lot of studies on gratitude. There's a study done by Emmons and McCullough. These are two psychologists, and they made people keep a gratitude journal every day for 10 weeks. And guess what? The group that kept the gratitude journal reported reduced stress, reduced anxiety, better mood, and improved depression-like symptoms in just 10 weeks. And so, number one, I think being mindful of these little strategies, exercises, we have talked about it, eating and making some healthy choices is a good idea. The other thing I definitely want to mention, especially in this COVID-19 crisis, is connections. The longest study done on happiness, what makes people healthy and happy. It's a study that comes out of Harvard, and the study was 80 years long. They followed some Harvard sophomores from 1936 all the way until, I think, in 2000, and they looked at people who were very healthy at the age of 80. And you know what they found? Was connections, healthy relationships, people who were well connected, who had healthy relationships, who had loving relationships, who had a place to share and connect, did better than people who were isolated, people who were lonely, or perhaps did not have a place to connect. So I think it's all the things we know, but sometimes I think we undervalue. I know for a fact that I've done that many times, but being mindful of small things, staying grateful, keeping a gratitude journal, staying connected with your friends and family, making some better choices for the most part in nutrition, exercising as much as and as many times as you can, movement. I think all those things matter, Richa. And I think I always say this: if you're driving on a freeway at a speed of 100 miles, you're not going to be able to stop with one brake. The process is slowing down and then eventually putting the brakes on. So you can't expect your body to go, and just stop and go to sleep in a matter of 15 minutes. That's not how it works. There's a process of slowing down and calming that stress so we can balance the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, the accelerator and the brake system a little bit better, which has a trickle effect on your heart, your mind, your body, your brain, and the rest of your, rest of the disease pattern. So I think that's my long answer, Richa. I think, Hafiza, I know you've talked about meditation and science behind meditation. It's not something that, our parents have said to us without any data. So I would be so curious to hear all about what you have to say about meditation.
So for those who are tuning in, I'm a cardiac electrophysiologist, which means that I deal with people who have problems with the beat of their heart. So by the time someone has been sent to me, things are messed up with their heartbeat. The heartbeat, my friends, is a vital sign, meaning it is an indication of life. You control your heartbeat with your brain. I'm one of women cardiac electrophysiologists in Texas, and I see so many women who are having heart palpitations, PVCs, menopausal symptoms. I want you to know that your brain connects to your heart, gut, your adrenal glands, and the most powerful stimulant that you make is not a cup of coffee or cocaine or methamphetamine. It is your own neurotransmitter. So your brain produces chemicals that go to different parts of your body, mention, and turn them on or turn them off. The acute flare, I call the hijack. That's the emotions. The chronic is cortisol. So if any of you are on Instagram, I have several videos on this. I'm a heart doctor. But I have maneuvers that you can do. I call it vagal biohacking. To lower your heart rate. I have patients who have abnormal heart rate going 200 beats a minute, and they can break it on their own by doing these maneuvers. And what are those maneuvers? What about Om? Om is a 4-syllable exhalation. Om. Om makes your vocal cord vibrate. It's an exhalation. It turns on your vagal, the off switch, by cranial nerve 10. There's science behind Om, a sound that we invented millennia, friend. Om, 4-syllable exhalation. When we inhale, our adrenaline goes up, but when we exhale, our adrenaline goes down. Inhaling is sympathetic, exhaling is parasympathetic. Om is an exhalation. What about pranayama, single nostril breathing? We invented that. 4 in, 8 out. What is pranayama? It's vagal biohacking. It increases your parasympathetic tone. So you have the ability to lower your heart rate, to lower your blood pressure through how you breathe. So breathing in, breathing out. How simple is that? I want less medications, doctor. Yes, you can have less medications by eating fruits and vegetables, breathing right, and modulating your adrenaline. So these things are ours. Pranayama. Oh, what about humming and chanting? Humming is your vocal cord. The vocal cord connects cranial nerve 10, which is a vagal nerve. Parasympathetic. So hum, sing. These things affect your heart. And like I said, I'm a heartbeat doctor. I make my money off of fixing things when people are about to die. It is so much better that if you're aware before the train crashes. So I have several videos on my Instagram, but this is our thing. How have we forgotten it? Cardio world of that we live in America. The peacefulness and the turning on of the vagal tone lowers adrenaline, lowers oxidative stress, and increases immunity. Cortisol. Okay, stress. What does that do? It affects our T cells, and it decreases our immune system. So, my friends, brain is powerful. Your brain controls your heart, your gut, and you own that. You have to take responsibility for that. Don't seek a doctor to have to give you a pill. What are we going to do? We're going to give 15 minutes, give you some pill, and then you're going to walk out like have a pill here. You don't have to purchase anything. This is our culture. We own this. Get it?
So true.
So if you want less medications are a Band-Aid. We heal ourselves. Garbage in, garbage out. When you buy that Mercedes, are you putting the 83 octane fuel? That's right there on the gas tank. Use the 93 octane. If you put the good stuff in, the car performs better. If you put the good stuff in, stuff that we have not screwed up, the stuff that God has given us, how simple is it? Green, red, raspberries, blueberries, mango. If we put things in that we have messed up, that are not processed, food is not meant to sit on a shelf and last until the apocalypse happens, my friends. bad habits. What do you think that chemical does to you? These are endocrine disruptors. These are things that affect your children. I have 2 sons. I don't want them to get any molecules that look like estrogen mimickers. So the answer is yes. The answer, though, is cluttered in noise that this world is giving. Diet food, diet this. Those are noise, my friends. Those are the basics.
Yep.
Along those lines of basics and keeping it so simple, I wanted to touch on a breathing technique that I think is additive to everything Hafiza has said, but it's so simple. I really want to take a moment to speak to the women who are listening to this who are incredibly busy. And if that's all of you, then I'm so glad that we have so many hustlers who are listening to us. But women who just feel that, oh, wait, meditation, yoga, working out, whoa. You made the time to be here, thank you. And if your life is absolutely insane and you don't feel like you have a minute, you're not alone. I want you to know about a breathing technique that as a busy interventional cardiologist, somebody who has to respond, many of us have to respond, but it's a technique that I've used in my own life because I used to lead with, wait a second, no, I have no time to meditate. It's called the 4-7-8 breathing technique. It's very simple. The science is what you've heard, so I'm going to just focus on, you inhale for 4, you hold for 7, and you exhale for 8. I promise you, no matter how busy you are, somewhere in the middle of a moment where you're about to have an emotional outburst or a very stressful release because you've been bottling things in, if you remember this and you do it, you will bring those hormones down. And that is the key. It's not the laundry list of all the data. We could talk forever. We love this stuff. We're here on a Saturday because we want to help more women and make it so much more practical for you. But this is so key. You have to be aware of how much stress is killing you. It kills more women than men. Do you know that marriage actually negatively affects women's heart health, but it makes men live longer? Yeah. Ladies, this is just so sad. Keep that in mind, right? Women are holding a lot of stress. Mother's Day, birthdays as we get older, holidays, Thanksgiving. These are days that are known to increase the rate of heart attacks in women. So be attuned to that. Call your mom. Check in on her. She's not going to tell you. Look for the subtleties in which you can help her reduce her stress or help her get sleep. So let's shift gears and talk about the importance of sleep. Sleep is so important for reducing cardiovascular risk. And what does that even look like? It looks like getting 7 hours of good quality sleep. Because when you sleep and it's of good quality, you reduce your blood pressure, you improve the way your body processes sugar, you decrease that insulin resistance that you're susceptible to, and you help heal the body, right? We talked about refueling and actually prevent unhealthy weight gain that can occur in sleep deprivation. There are going to be moments in life where maybe as a new mother, maybe when you're on call, maybe because you have your in-laws staying with you, you might not be getting enough sleep. But remember that those moments are temporary, and those are the times where you have to check in with yourself. Remember that 4-7-8 breathing technique and steal time when you can to reduce your stress and help yourself get those 7 hours of good quality sleep. So what does that look like? If you want to be in bed at 10 or 10:30, get to the bed 30 minutes before at least and turn off your phone. Otherwise, Instagram, Facebook, scrolling, TikTok, who knows what your technology love is at the moment, it's going to keep your brain firing. And you've got to turn that down. I personally use aromatherapy. It just helps me throughout my day in my office, at home. It also helps me do something. It's like my little ritual. Because if you can make yourself do something, then you're already going to be more mindful. It doesn't have to look like a meditation. It doesn't have to look like the yoga that you see on TV. It could be your own little thing that you do that says, hey, now I'm going to go to bed. Now I'm going to do a diffuser, or I'm going to close my eyes and do some breathing. It can be so simple. So definitely keep this with you. I'm going to toss it back to Hafiza and just kind of reviewing now about how our viewers can know if they're at risk.
So again, regular doctor visits, and be the owner of your numbers. Don't just walk out of the doctor's office, oh, they said it was all okay. What are those details? What exactly was your blood pressure? What exactly was your cholesterol? And just remember, for us South Asians, it's not all about the LDL. It's about low HDL and high triglycerides. So our cholesterol numbers, hemoglobin A1C, and the body mass index is receptive for us. So we have a different standard and waist. So blood pressure, lipid panel, which is not about LDL, hemoglobin A1C, waist circumference versus BMI, and I'm mistaken. I think that's, and then don't just be satisfied. We have portals. You can get your own data. So the doctor said everything was okay. Look at non-traditional risk factors, PCOS, gestational diabetes, infertility as a risk factor for treatments can be a risk factor. So